Hello there, welcome to part 14 of my Clone Wars analysis series. In today's video we'll be examining Defenders of Peace, Season 1, Episode 14. The goal of this series is to unpack the Clone Wars animated show and look closely at its themes, characters, and politics. As always, there will be spoilers as we are covering the entire episode and series. That said, let's jump into it. Defenders of Peace is the second episode in a two-part narrative arc coming after Jedi Crash, which focuses on Anakin, Ahsoka, and guest-starring Jedi Aayla Secura. After rescuing Aayla Secura, the Jedi have crashed on a remote planet and Anakin is badly injured. A colony of Lurmen who are on the planet to escape the chaos of the war are able to help Anakin with their primitive yet effective healing ways. This episode has the Separatists come to the planet, which tests the morals of all characters involved, that of the Lurmen's view of peace, and the Jedi's view of security and defense. The quote for the episode is, "When surrounded by war, one must eventually choose a side." This quote is an ultimatum, speaking to the inevitability and eventuality of war. There is no such thing as neutrality. Within the context of the episode, the Lurmen are not able to remain neutral when the Separatists in Clone War comes to them. One can examine neutrality beyond this episode, such as when it's heavily explored with Duchess Satine and Mandalore and how she is pressured into picking a side. I believe that the quote could also undermine fake neutrality, such as that of the Trade Federation, as they are technically neutral, but they've definitely picked their side, and the Separatists as they fund them and make their droids. The Lurmen colony is a bit primitive. Primitive in terms of Star Wars, as there is technology where people can use hyperspace across the galaxy. Many audiences would be familiar with the tribe on episode 4 of The Mandalorian, that they were a rustic fishing and agrarian society without much technology. Their way of life was peaceful, and so is that of the Lurmen here. We can see them carrying barrels of fruit, and there is no signs of technology. In both this Clone Wars episode, Defenders of Peace, and Mandalorian Chapter 4, Sanctuary, you have the Seven Samurai trope, which plays off the idea of a group of outsiders helping to defend a village, which was the story of Seven Samurai by Akira Kurosawa, a legendary Japanese director who George Lucas was inspired by for aspects of Star Wars overall. So the Seven Samurai trope showing up in the Clone Wars makes sense. Rex spots a Separatist ship descending into atmosphere. When informed, Wag-2, the Lurmen healer, contends that this planet is neutral space and the Separatists shouldn't be here. Anakin is aware of how the Separatists operate, as they have shown neglect to establish war conventions many times already. Anakin is a willful character and passionate about his cause, so he tries to get up so he can fight, but he's still injured from the blast in the last episode and is currently helpless. Anakin's injured state is a plot point of suspense and danger for the heroes and Lurmen, as with Anakin weakened, Ahsoka, Aayla, Bly, and Rex are down one fighter for the moment, and as they have to hide from the Separatists, moving Anakin will be less easy, as he is indeed injured. These characters come to the decision that they had to hide from the Separatists in order to avoid conflict. The Lurmen's primary goal as a colony is to avoid conflict in the Clone War, that's why they are on this isolated planet. With the arrival of the Jedi from the crash, the Lurmen leader is unsettled and now blames the Jedi for the Separatists' arrival. He's concerned for the safety of his people, as the Jedi's presence compromises their safety, as the Separatists would most definitely attack if the Jedi were spotted. The Jedi agree to hide, understanding the danger the Lurmen are in because of them being there. Young and not understanding the Lurmen's intentions, Ahsoka assumes that the Lurmen are going to fight the Separatists alone. The Lurmen leader is a person of tradition and is very strict about their morality. He insists that he would rather be killed than to kill. This is a noble way of thinking and can be considered true morality. In the last episode we analyzed how the Lurmen's views on the Jedi are somewhat accurate, as they are not peacekeepers, and the truest moments of Jedi character are when they lay down their arms. However, his view of morality isn't practical. For his own survival and the survival of his people, allowing oneself to be walked over by outsiders doesn't seem justifiable. The question this episode poses is how one can stay true to one's morals and tradition, but in a practical sense to still survive the uncertainty of the world. The Separatists are led by General Lok Durd, a Nemodian leader among the likes of Nute Gunray, but he's characterized a lot differently. When it comes to his appearance, he's fatter than most Nemodians, which may be funny to address, but it's interesting and reminds me of political cartoons where business leaders and politicians are depicted as very large in size to symbolize their greed and wealth. Nemodians are inherently very greedy, and it's likely Lok Durd is extremely wealthy from profits stemming from the war. When the Lurmen leader introduces himself, Lok Durd ignores him, interrupts him, and declares himself the new ruling power of the colony. The Lurmen is continually ignored, and Lok Durd says, "I went to inspect my new colony." He's characterized as selfish, just like Gunray, but he's seemingly more indifferent and objective. His droids start ransacking the village as ordered, and Wag-2 questions why, as this violence was completely unprovoked. Wag-2's surprise is the origins of his overall questioning of his father's moral values and their tradition. The Lurmen leader says, "We will offer no resistance," when Lok Durd tells him that they will do more searches for weapons and Republic contraband in the future. To this, Lockdart says, "Your species is smarter than you appear," which is a direct insult. Like we analyzed earlier, the Lormen are extremely primitive in terms of Star Wars technology, but primitive technology doesn't mean that they are dumb. However, Lockdart associates inadequacy and unintelligence with no technology. He dehumanizes them based on their agrarian way of life. For Lockdart to value technology makes sense as he's the leader in a droid army, and likely takes a pride in the droid's effectiveness. As we learn, he's the creator of a new weapon, so he may look down on those who lack the same mechanical skills that he has. He may also look down on the Lormen for having no weapons, because he is the creator of a weapon and is defined by this fact, and his ability to destroy. He says that they are smarter than they look because the Lormen are willingly letting him have his way and walk all over them. Their compliance and moral virtues of neutrality and peace allow him to have free reign and test his weapon. Wag 2 questions his father. As he's young, he's likely to question tradition more easily and has a desire to help the Jedi because it seems like the morally correct thing to do. The father isn't against the Jedi, but simply doesn't want to help them because it would drag him into a war and cause him to lose his prized neutrality. But as Lockdart's presence indicates, despite what one does, what other people do can always affect you. Rex, a clone bred for combat and war, says that the Lormen don't fight because they don't have pride. I think it's very common that we see the clones fight and die for the Republic, because they have a great pride and honor in what they do. It's very rare that they question orders or the war itself. Ahsoka, a Jedi Padawan, says that the villagers lack the courage to fight. I'd say she says this because she's young herself and goes into battlefield all the time, despite being young. Aayla Secura says that real courage is sticking to one's belief, and she tacks on, "as any Jedi well knows," which I find to be interesting because the Jedi belief system is a challenging one to have. Aayla and Ahsoka discuss Jedi compassion and attachment in the last episode, and overall the Clone Wars expresses the difficulty of sticking to one's code. A Separatist probe interrupts their conversation, and to avoid being seen, they try to destroy it. During this chase, Anakin is slowed by his injury, showing that if they were to have a full-on fight right now, he'd be a detriment to the team. At the end of the chase, they scale a tree and discover a Separatist fortress guarding the ship they need to get off-world. Lockdart tests his new defoliator capsule and brags about how it's of his own design in his speech. It's a bit amusing as he's bragging to droids who aren't sentient and don't really care about his accomplishments, but Lockdart's ego is strong that he goes on about it. The weapon will destroy organic life but leave machines unharmed, so in the terms of the Clone Wars overall, this is a pretty big deal. When talking to Count Dooku via a hologram, Lockdart once again boasts and says, "my," but has to correct himself to say, "our new weapon" when Dooku gives him a look of scorn. By saying "my," his selfishness and greed is once again emphasized. When the defoliator capsule impacts, it nearly catches Rex and Bly in the blast. Aayla Secura saves Commander Bly, which is the second ironic image in this arc, and it is Bly who kills her during Order 66. Throughout the show, there are instances of ironic imagery like this, where the Jedi save the commanders who inevitably turn on them. Wag 2 and his father have another debate about their tradition and virtues. Wag 2 says that even if they don't fight the Separatists, that they have to defend themselves. However, his father says that defense is still engaging in battle, and how I perceive this quote is that by engaging in battle, you're engaging in what the enemy wants. The best example of laying down arms that matches with the father's ideals is when Luke throws his lightsaber away and refuses to do the Emperor's bidding of violence. However, he gets electrocuted and would have been destroyed if Anakin didn't return to Vader's surface. Having a moment of pure and noble character can be great, but its practicality can get you destroyed, and without doing anything, the Lormen will be annihilated by Lockdart's new weapon. When it comes to neutrality and peace, is it practical? The Jedi steal shield generators and a shuttle from the Separatist fortress, and instead of abandoning the planet and heading home, they return to the Lormen to help them, as they don't want them to be exterminated. It is against their morals to let innocents die. Everyone sticks to their values. The Lormen leader insists that he'll die instead of abandoning his home or fight, and as protectors of the galaxy, the Jedi barricade the town and activate the shield generator in order to save the Lormen. We get another small moment of Lockdart's characterization as he's looking for a promotion as a reward for making this weapon, and again, it shows his greed and selfishness and lust for power and wealth. Ultimately, Wag 2 and the other Lormen decide that they had to defend themselves and their homes from the droid army. They don't destroy any droids, but use ropes to knock them over, similar to how they do against wild animals. And it is Ahsoka who destroys the droids, which shows that both sides are able to stand by their beliefs, but in a practical way. The Lormen thank the Jedi, but the episode ends with a somewhat ominous note as the father says, "at what cost," when Republic Star Destroyers appear above them. The Jedi helps fight off the Separatists in the war, but the Jedi are unknowingly complacent in the rise of the Empire. By fighting in the war alongside the clones and being soldiers instead of peacekeepers and spreading violence even if it's through defense, they are playing Palpatine's game. planets once under Republic control become under Imperial control at the end of the war. I'm unsure if the Lurman colonies would side with the Republic after this incident, but the image of the Venators in the sky is reminiscent of Imperial Star Destroyers and suggests what life will be like for many planets across the galaxy once the Jedi are no more.